Hey, it's Skillbyte here, and in this video I'm going to show you how I made this look like this. Now I wanted minimum cost and effort, so basically a 10-foot paint job. Don't look too close. I also had a time crunch, so I had to do all the spray can stuff in one day. Again, I wasn't looking for perfection, just 80% or better. Here are a few of the things that I used during this process. Dawn dishwashing detergent. That is for removing grease. Yep, it works. Warm water, some Dawn that helps get grease wax off, wax on. Also ended up using some 70%, and I actually mixed it with some water. So it was probably 50-50 before painting, and so when all the grease and stuff was off, ended up using scuff pads, sandpaper, lots of sandpaper. Where it was flat and I could use this, I did. And nylon wire wheels for the vents in the cowl. Gloves for when you're using the scuff pads. For the sprays, the Duplicolor Automotive Prep Spray. Well, I tried this. That actually reacted to the old primer on the truck. That's why I have some of the waviness on that C-pillar. That didn't work too well for me. I ended up using a mix of rubbing alcohol and water to wipe everything off. Use a microfiber cloth with that, and use tack rags between the types. So the truck is galvanized steel, so I had to use an etch primer. So I started with that. Anywhere there's metal, I had to use this on galvanized steel. Now, I read a whole lot of opinions on it, but I know this works. So that's what I did. Followed that with just this Rust-Oleum 2X flat gray primer. Now, in hindsight, probably something like a 2-in-1 filler sandable. That would have helped me out and eliminated some of those, like those pits on the cowl. For the base coat, went to O'Reilly's and had them custom match. I used the fuel tank door on the side of the truck to match, and it's really hard to match black, because I'm not sure exactly what black this is. I don't think it's the Raven black. It's I'm actually thinking it's ebony, but I'm not sure. I had to match it. They got close, but it's not exact. It's again, it's black. It worked well if you can get a good match. And they did use the machine to try to match it. And you know, it's black paint. Black paint's really hard to match. And then we have 2K gloss coat. This is one I used. 2K is 2 parts, not 2X clear coat. 2X is just twice as much. Well, twice the coverage. They're different. This is not an automotive clear coat. Sure, put it on your car, whatever. I mean, it's cheap. This is a little more expensive, but it has UV protection, and it's made for things like automotive paint. So this should protect better and last longer. Tapes. Almost forgot this. Painter's tape. Great for, you know, on your drywall and such, but this may not keep automotive paint, which is thinner, from getting underneath it. Don't recommend it. Masking tape. This will definitely keep paint from getting underneath it, but it sticks harder than you want. Also, even this, don't leave this on your car in the sun for any length of time, because it will stick to the paint, and at minimum will be hard to pull off and may in fact pull your paint up. This is auto paint. There's green, there's yellows, there's a few colors. This is what you want to use anywhere where it's on the paint. That's one of the things that I learned in this. So use this. I wouldn't leave this in the sun either. You're probably going to have the same problem as this. I mean, you can use this, just don't leave it on very long. And if you put it on like rubber or something, you will have to clean some residue off. I did. I did not use the Bondo, the glazing and spot putty. If you are trying to fill in stuff like that on that cowl and this isn't enough, you can go that route if you want. There's several options there. All right, let's look at the actual process. So one of the first things you want to do is wash the area that you want to fix the clear coat on. Just wash it with soap and water. Then you want to start pulling the clear coat off. So after you use the plastic scraper, you can use a Scotch-Brite pad or something like that. In my case, I used sandpaper. Now I started off, I think that was 1500 grit, and along with water with just a couple drops of soap in it, not too much. And you're going to start sanding, and the idea is you want to sand off all that clear coat that's bubbling. If the clear coat is bubbled, if I re-clear over that, well, it's number one, you're going to see it. Number two, that's still bubbled, it's not sticking, and it's going to break through the new clear coat. So you've got to get those off. I taped off where I didn't want to sand, so I'm going to be right here. That's going to be a line. Right here is going to be a line. Down here is going to be a line. I haven't touched this yet. And here on the front, these are fun. You got to get that off, or at least smooth. Otherwise, you're going to have the same problem again. And you can see there's some that right down to the metal. So this has some bubbles in there. So it needs sanded, and that's probably going to just have to be completely painted and then clear coated. But we'll do what we can. And I will mention, when you're sanding, you're spraying all the time, and this will show you what it'll look like. If I clear coated that, that's what it'll look like. So you'll have a dark spot, and then you'll have where the clear coat discolored and it's not quite black. But it just takes a lot of sanding, a lot of patience. Just keep working at it and try not to go through. So that is step one. Oh, and you'll want to tape off anything that you don't want to get sanded. Everywhere there's an edge on the clear coat, just flakes. Even after sanding. Ah, look at that. That's super disappointing. Hopefully you'll have better luck. Some of it's okay, like right in here. That's fine. That's what you want right there. It's a nice smooth edge. Everything's good. Then you come up here. Nope. Look at that. That's just going to flake off. If I paint over that, it's just going to loosen and bubble, and I'll be right back where I started. And this is definitely proving to be a challenge in the cowl here, these cowl vents. But just got to work it. I'm going to show you something here. It's been a couple days, and look at that. The clear coat's bubbling off again. Even where I sanded, bubbling off. This is what it was doing, causing me to do what I'm doing. Gonna have to get completely through this clear coat in order to have a good chance that it won't bubble because it'll be gone. It hasn't bubbled down here, so I'm hoping it won't. All right, it's been several days, been working on it, hour, sometimes 2 when I could. Anyway, don't make fun of my hat. It is cool. And I mean in temperature wise, not in style wise. So what I have here is a test paint section on a piece of metal. It's not galvanized. It's very rusty, but I put first the etch primer. Then on this one I put some acrylic primer. Then I did the base coat, and then I did a cheap clear coat. And the color I think looks a little better with the one that had the extra primer on top. And I've read all kinds of opinions on how to paint over etch primer. Some say you need a second primer, some will say you got to use urethane, some will, you know, say that you can use acrylic, you know, whatever. There's so many opinions out there. So it's been a few days since I did this, so it should be completely cured. I put the duct tape on it about an hour ago. I'm going to leave it there at least another couple hours, and then I'm going to pull them off, and I'm going to see what happens with the paint, and that should give me some idea, at least of the short-term adhesion. How did my paint samples go? Neither one of them pulled up. And this was really stuck down. That one little spot on that one. None on that, and honestly, that was possibly a speck of dirt or rust that was under the paint. I did wire brush it and just a touch of sanding, but I did not get all the rust off. I'm going with the etch primer with a acrylic primer on top after per my etch primer instructions, the tech data sheet. You wait 15 minutes, you do your coat, your second coat in 5 minutes later, then 15 minutes later you do your primer or sealer. And so I'm going to go ahead and do the primer. You could probably not do the primer, it'd be fine, but I'm going to go ahead and do the primer. Based on my testing, should be good. I did a little test section here, sticking really well. Takes a lot of time to do the prep. You're going to want to use something to degrease it. Some alcohol, some acetane, you know, that kind of stuff to clean yours up. Let me show you over here what I did. Is that weed eater line? It is. I have that underneath the rubber around the windshield and actually on the back on that other side to lift that rubber off of the metal so I could get in there just a little more, and that way when it's done you're not going to have that little ugly gap where the paint's going to pull back a little from the rubber. And on this piece I actually used an old shoelace and the tape goes in and then folds around, and I used a trim piece tool to try to push the tape on the back of the rubber piece. And by the way, you do need to clean the rubber seal so that the tape will stick to it. This is where I'm going to try to I don't know what you call it, feather the edge so it's not a hard line, it's a little softer. Piece of advice. So in here I have rolled up paper, so I taped against the door jamb. I have tape there, and then I have rolled up newspaper inside there. Now That's a tip. However, the bigger tip, perhaps, is don't do this until you've actually dealt with the jam on the front. Oh man, yeah. I'm gonna have to open that back up. Whew. All right, masking all this stuff off. It's a crazy long time. And I see a spot I missed right there. Taping it off. So I still got to put a backwards piece of tape here. See how I did that here? I'll do the same here. Wow, takes a long time to do all this with newspaper. Crazy long time. Etch primer. Been applied. 2 medium coats. By the way, be sure to be wearing one of those. Key with that etch primer is this is galvanized steel. So you need to use an etch primer for it to stick. Now, some people say you can use an epoxy. I don't know, maybe. But I know etch primer works. This is just going to get a very light base coat and then clear coat. Follow the instructions on your product because they have open windows that you gotta understand. You use this Rust-Oleum 2X ultra coverage. Be sure to have a paper towel. Wipe off that nozzle quite often. The nozzle is not the greatest, and the paint will build up there, and then it'll spit. So I'm having to dab it every couple sprays. If I move from panel to panel, and even like on the front, from side to side, I'm having to dab it, otherwise it'll splatter. On to the next coat. So after the second coat, hopefully you can see that. There's some places there and right there. It's not perfect. Now I could put some 2-in-1 filler on there and then sand it, get it smooth. Now I'm not that worried about this because this truck just isn't perfect. The paint looks okay, but there's chips and stuff on it, so I'm not that worried about it. It's not a show truck. If the rest of it was really nice, then I'd go ahead and take care of that, but honestly, it's just not, I don't have the time. All right, something I didn't mention is the use of tack cloth, a fresh tack cloth, and between the base coat and the clear coat, do what your base coat says. Mine says 15 to 20 minutes for clear coat. If yours doesn't say 20, sometimes 30 minutes is the right answer. Make sure the paint is dry. Then just rub a tack cloth over it just to make sure nothing has landed on it. You can do this between coats. Just make sure everything is dry. All right, so for this stuff, you absolutely got to wear a respirator. That stuff is very bad for you. I took the red cap off, put it on the bottom. Cap is on. I've shaken it for 2 minutes. Now I'm going to push this in, and you might be able to hear it. Okay, that is now mixed. Well, the hardener is now able to get in there with the paint, and you got to shake it 2 more minutes. So I noticed there was a kind of a light spot right here. So what I went ahead and did is I did a 3rd coat on this B pillar, just a light 3rd coat. Now I got to reset the timer, in my case 15 to 20 minutes before I can put the clear, but the rest is ready for the clear. So I'm going to go ahead and do those, and then I'll come back and do that later. To check if it's dry to the touch the tape around it. Then you can just double check on the paint. Yep, that is dry. Should be good for a clear coat. And this one has got a little clear coat on it. Alright, 3. Oh, I actually forget if it was 3 or 4. Sorry, I got a mask on, respirators, because of that stuff. Whew. Anywho, looking pretty good. A lot better than killing clear coat. You can see the places where the paint was chipped and stuff, but still it's better than killing clear coat. And okay, a couple tips. One, if you get the UPOL, so I got this from O'Reilly's, and it's only 4 ounces. I barely had enough to do the cowl, the A pillars, this section of the door, and the B pillar. Just barely had enough. And use a stinking light. Alright. What you're going to see is some lightness on the base coat right there. It was a little too thin when I painted it. I should have made it a little thicker. Just a touch there, and maybe you can see it here. Just a little. This paint has a green tint of all things. I was really surprised, but it does. Oh, here we go. You can see, hopefully. So my coverage was not the best on the base coat. So check yours with a actual light to make sure it's complete coverage. And again, 4 ounces is all that's in those cans, so it should be a really good match, but it's just not a lot of paint, and it's not really cheap either. If you don't have a setup for a compressor, your own paint setup with a compressor and spray gun, and you just got a little section to do, this is still a valid way to do it. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the wipe-on, like Vice Grip Garage, and I forget the name of the other one, whatever it is. They have a wipe-on clear coat. It's for patina. However, you can put that on anything. Now, it's not necessarily going to be as smooth as this, but at the same time, it probably would have filled in some of this. So, bear in mind that that's out there, and it's, for a clear coat, it's more expensive than a can, but at the same time, it's probably easier to use, and when you're rubbing it on, it'll probably be thicker, although I think it was 4 coats. One thing on the spray cans, you want at least 3, and stop if you get a good coat. So if you had a nice, shiny, minimum orange peel one, you can stop there. 3 is fine. You could also buff it. So I'm sure I'll be buffing this at some point. But now we gotta wait 24 hours to take the paper off. Color turned out to be a pretty good match. Now this is dirty. This is a paint mark. And then this is of course the new paint. It will need to be buffed. There's some orange peel. I mean, it is clear in a can, so you're gonna have some orange peel. So a couple things on tape. Now masking tape, all right. So the stickier the tape is, the less time you wanna leave it on the vehicle. And in this case, I put masking tape on the rubber, and there's definitely some sticking. Probably shouldn't have done that. I used the green tape on this and it did not stick to the rubber. So use the actual automotive paint tape on the rubber pieces, not masking tape. And even the blue tape, if you leave it on too long, especially if it's like in the sun, so that's what this line is from. Now I'll be able to get that off no problem, but it was really stuck. So when you take your tape off, make sure you pull it like so that it's less likely. You don't want to pull like that. That's going to put a lot of pressure here and possibly pull paint up with it. You want to turn it like this and pull away if you can from the paint line. So I put the shoelace here under the rubber, and then I've got a piece of weed eater cord that's here, and then on the front, on the bottom. Now, when you pull that out, you're going to have to be very careful, and what you're going to want to do is actually lift the rubber up as you're pulling it out. That way you won't pull the paint up with it. So hopefully this down here will be the hard part. That paint's got to be dry before you do this. So here is another hard line, and yes, the paint was not 100%. So even with the machine and everything, it's still not 100%. It's a little disappointing, but it happens. And soapy water. I'm using 3000 grit. You can go a coarser grit to start if you want and work up, but I'm being very gentle on this. And there's that pool noodle I just got wrapped around it. Where this line is, start sanding. Again, you're gonna have to polish it, but this will get the line out, it'll smooth it out. You're gonna sand it until you can no longer feel it, and then you'll use a polisher and start polishing. And if you got too much orange peel, go ahead and do this on the fresh paint. That'll help knock that orange peel down. Be very careful on the edges. You don't want to sand much there because you'll go through. It's inevitable. Don't do it. All right, I got work to do. So I sanded some of the orange peel. You can really see it now. That's 3000 grit. This could use a little more here on the line, and this is 3000. It's into the paint. However, this will buff out. And proper technique for a soft line is to sand past your paint. Then you put your tape here and you fold it back, but don't have it too far back like I did, or you're going to end up with a hard line anyway. And that'll soften that up. Then you got to come in behind it and buff it, and this will buff out. All right, using a wool pad. It's looking better. We can make it, you can still see there's a few little scratches in there. So we'll move to a medium compound and finally a polish compound and really get it shining. All right, after the orange pad medium cut, looking pretty good. If only the paint matched. Oh, if only. All right. So now you want to do the actual polishing pad and get that nice and shiny. All right, how's that look? So I hope that was helpful. Maybe in the fall, I'll get a better paint match, do a scuff and spray. Well, you know, if I'm gonna do that, I might as well fill in like this section, catches wax. And well, if I'm gonna do that, right here, where the paint prep reacted with the base primer, I should go ahead and flatten that out. And yeah, that's how it goes, isn't it? All right, it's just a work truck. Hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching.